All right, this is chapter 35, and we're talking about measuring and recipes and all kinds of different cooking type techniques will be coming up pretty soon. So this says here, measuring liquid ingredients. I guess I can't get that any bigger than what, oh yeah, that's a lot better. Now I can see it. Liquid ingredients such as milk, water, or oil are measured in clear liquid measuring cups. So usually they're glass or they're plastic, they're clear liquid measuring cups. That way you can see through them. You can see where you're measuring to the line. And then and it says it here, for accurate measurements, place the cup on a flat surface and read the measurement at eye level. So you just kneel down, look at it as you're pouring it very carefully, and then it fills to the exact line. You can measure small amounts of liquids in measuring spoons. Just fill the spoon to the brim. So completely fill it. Like if you are measuring liquid vanilla, then you would fill it all the way up. Okay, measuring fats, believe it or not, butter is a fat. So sticks of margarine or butter have measurements marked on the wrapper. So if you look at the outside wrapper on each stick, it will tell you. And it says here 1 stick equals half a cup. If you can remember that, 1 stick equals half a cup, then you should never even have to look at the outside of a wrapper again. Every once in a while, I question myself. I'm like, all right, that's a half stick of butter, right? Or 1 stick of butter is a half a cup. And then it's right there. There are other measurements on there also. Like if you have a recipe that calls for tablespoons, that will show up on there as well. So if you need just part of a stick, cut through the wrapper on the appropriate markings. And I just use a butter knife that has a little bit of a serrated edge on it, and it cuts right through the thin paper. You can measure solid fats such as shortening in a dry measuring cup. So a dry measuring cup, the one with a little handle on it that you can't see through. First pack the fat into the cup and level it off. Use a plastic flexible scraper to remove the fat from the cup. Okay, the next section is called Understanding Recipe Terms. Some words have a special meaning when used in food preparation. When reading a recipe, pay attention to the exact term used. It's your clue to the tool you need and the technique to follow. Okay, so here is some stuff about mixing terms. A number of recipe techniques are used to describe different ways of combining ingredients. Here are some of the most common ones. So the first picture you see, and it is kind of hard to see that, but this person is using a wooden spoon, a wooden stirring spoon. So this says stir. Stir is the definition, or the vocabulary word, I guess you could say. And then the definition is use a spoon to make circular or figure 8 motions, as in stirring soup when it warms. Blend, mix, combine is the next term, and it says to use a spoon to stir 2 or more ingredients together thoroughly. The next one is beat, and it looks like they're using a wire whisk on that one. And the other one, they were using another wooden spoon. So beat, use this technique to smooth a mixture, as in mixing a cake batter. Use a quick over and under motion with a spoon or wire whisk, or a rotary beater or electric mixer, which most people don't use that rotary beater, which is in this picture right here. They'll use an electric mixer or like a KitchenAid stand mixer. Here's a picture of an electric mixer. Okay, whip is the next one, and this technique is to beat ingredients very rapidly to bring in air and increase volume, as in whipping cream. Use a wire whisk, rotary beater, or electric mixer. And I think they can also add it like a KitchenAid stand mixer also. Okay, to cream something means use a spoon beater or mixer to combine ingredients until soft and creamy, as in combining fat and sugar together for a cake. I still use my KitchenAid mixer for that though. Cut in, and this is a pastry blender, a picture of a pastry blender, and it says to cut in, use a pastry blender or 2 knives And most people just use 2 knives or even 2 forks. And this is a cutting motion to mix solid fat with dry ingredients, as in cutting fat into flour for a pie crust. And then I think there's not one over there. Okay, fold. And they're using a rubber scraper right here. And fold is to use a rubber scraper to gently combine ingredients in a delicate mixture, such as folding beaten egg whites into a mixture. And we will use some of these techniques, these mixing techniques, when we make dirt pudding. Okay, now these are all cutting terms, and sometimes I like to watch the videos that Gordon Ramsay makes, because he has some really quick ways of cutting things, and I'll be showing a video on that as well. Do you know the difference between mincing and chopping, or between cubing and dicing? Some of these techniques may seem minor at first glance, but they can make a big difference in the appearance or texture of a dish. And sometimes if you don't cut it the right way, it's not going to cook properly. And I'm surprised they didn't put that on there, unless I missed it somewhere in this chapter. But yeah, if you don't chop it up correctly, it's not going to cook properly. Okay, so the first one is like a rough chop. This is cutting food into small, irregular pieces, as in chopping green peppers, and it looks like they're doing a carrot. And notice their fingers are not right there in the way, it's out of the way. This one is mince. I'm trying to think. I think McDonald's has, is it the single cheeseburger maybe, that has the minced onions? Like they're really fine, like little tiny chops of onions. So it says to chop food into pieces that are as small as possible, as in mincing an onion. So if you can see that picture, I mean, that onion is really, really tiny. And they're using a chef's knife for that. And this is a different way of cutting too, holding this edge here. And I said that mincing, you never ever take your knife off the chopping block. Or cutting board, I guess you could call it too. Okay, to cube something, it says to cut into evenly shaped pieces about 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters on each side, as in cubing bread. I guess that Thanksgiving you could use that for your stuffing recipes. And to dice something means to cut evenly shaped pieces. And notice it's another evenly shaped piece, about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters on each side, as in dicing ingredients for a salad. Because if you don't dice ingredients for a salad, like who wants big, huge chunks of salad stuff that you're going to have to cut it up with a knife anyway, I guess. Okay, here's to pare, and notice they're using a paring knife. It says to cut off the outside covering of a fruit or vegetable, as in paring an apple. Kiwi, I will use that for kiwi. And I think I mentioned in class at one point that sometimes people use that for potatoes also, but I use a peeler for that. Okay, here's a picture of a grater. And it says here to rub food over a grater, the side with small holes, to get fine particles, as in grating cheese. And this is not, it's not like shredding it. It's because shredding's over here in this picture. This is to grate. Like you get almost like, I don't know, like a sand texture, I guess you could say. Or maybe a little bit more than a sand texture. Okay, so this is the shredder part of it. Cut or tear food into long, thin pieces. Depending on the food, you might use a knife, 2 forks, a grater, or a food processor. And some of you mentioned in class that you have food processors at home. All right, so here's some other cooking terms here. You'll probably read some of the following terms as you look through recipes. So I bet you've seen this during Thanksgiving also. And it says baste, and baste means to moisten food such as meat while cooking. Basting adds flavor and helps keep food from drying out. So if you want like your food to be very moist, that's what you would do, is to baste it several times throughout the cooking process. And then it says here brush, Use the brush to lightly cover the surface of one food with another, as in brushing barbecue sauce on meat, or some people brush butter on top of something. To coat something is to cover the surface of a food with a dry ingredient such as flour, cornmeal, dry bread crumbs, or sugar. So before you're frying something in a pan, that's what you would use to coat. Okay, garnish. I don't garnish anything at home, but restaurants do this. I think they still do this. It doesn't seem like I've eaten out very much lately. Decorate a food dish with a small food item such as a sprig of parsley, a carrot curl, or an edible flower. So that would be to garnish your dish. And then grease is to rub lightly with fat such as butter, margarine, oil, or shortening, as in greasing a baking sheet. And I know this picture looks like there's a lot of grease on here. It looks like Crisco or something. Um, but you just need a thin layer. You don't overdo it, or your food tends to taste like whatever you're greasing it with. So don't overdo it. And if you do get too much on there, just take a paper towel and wipe out the excess. Okay, to season something, a lot of people like to season their food. You add seasonings such as salt, pepper, different herbs, spices to add flavor to a food. And then the last one on here is called draining. To drain something means to remove excess liquid by placing food in a colander or strainer, as in draining pasta. And I know I have a test set up for all of these, so you might want to make sure that you're understanding all of them and reviewing that before the next test. So that's the end of the video. Have a great one.